Thank you for inviting me to join us. I'm the only one without a speech. I just wanted to get back to some of the comments that were made, and one of the last sentences of Ms. Marcy made me think of actually the findings of a project that we did comparing the experiences of Irish communities and Muslim communities between the 1970s and the 2000s years. And actually, one of the striking elements that came out of the conversations that we encouraged between Irish members of the Irish community in Britain and Muslim, young Muslims, was actually the sense of that despite everything, despite this suspectification that has been going on with the counter-terrorism laws, despite the negative media representation, actually, for some reason, British society has allowed for communities to be rehabilitated, to be reintegrated into society. And I think it was actually a very moving experience in the whole research process to see that there were Irish people going there to the members of the panel discussion saying, I know it's hard. It will stop, you know, you can have a better future, look at us. And I think this is a ray of hope, and it makes me think that perhaps, again, in sympathy with what Madam Esparcy was saying, perhaps the best strategy to get over the difficulties, the experiences of racism, experiences of discrimination and negative picturing in the media, is not so much that of going around banging on the Islamophobia thing, because that's not really the best card to play. It's a card that actually is going to alienate even further those that are already on the right-wing extremist side. So if you go around talking about Islamophobia, they are sort of shutting down. Whereas if you try to play with the little steps that you've gained in being appreciated for your work, for your studies, for your profession, for your work in civil society level, I think that is the best way. And in a way, I'm quite interested in your research on the representation of Muslim students. In a way, unfortunately, your findings are not that exceptional if you think that youth is actually a problem thing in the media. Youth is normally covered in a negative way. I'm not a specialist of this field, but I have colleagues in the city who work in the field of criminology. And there is endless research actually on the problematization of youth in British society, in European society, and in the media. So I think that the negative representation of Muslim students is a problem on its own, but in a way feeds into the bigger problem of youth being badly represented. And if you think that your coverage, the period you covered, coincided more or less with the riots in the summer of 2011, right? I think the riots, so in a way you picked a story about Muslim youth at a time where youth in general in British society were under attack, were under the spotlight. You know, they are rebels, all of them, not just these Muslims who could potentially be radicals. So, I mean, obviously your research is very valuable, but I was just trying to add a further element for interpretation. Yeah, and in terms of my experience, I research Muslim communities and I do a lot of comparative work. So I find, as I said, I recently did this study on the Irish and Muslim communities, and that was quite helpful in order to take a step back, not to justify, but to see the current difficulties for the Muslim communities through another perspective and to allow for the benefit of history, for allowing you to work more slowly according to the rhythms of your society, and to try to make your transformation of society at the pace that society can accept it. And another element that came out of that comparative research was that as negative as the image of Muslims in the media has been in the years since 9/11 and around 2005, actually Muslim students and Muslim individuals in general are in a much more privileged position compared to what Irish communities were. If anything, because for instance we are gathering here in the House of Lords, and there have been endless demonstrations, associations that have organized activities to show that, you know, the majority of British society, of European Muslim society, is not made of terrorists. That, you know, there is many people who are committed to this society, and there has been a space, despite all the negativities, there's been a space to do this, especially in British society, which wasn't there at the time when the Irish were under threat, because they didn't have the courage, the stamina that Muslim individuals, Muslim communities have been demonstrating in the years of this first new century. Because British society has adapted to diversity in a way in which it wasn't ready at the time when the Irish communities were under threat. So despite all these negative realities that are true, I would really like to send a positive message and try to sort of forget about the negative and look at these positive gains and this privileged position. Also look at these, you know, the ability, the skills that younger Muslim generations are demonstrating in British society, whereas, you know, Irish people in the 1970s, 1980s, few of them were going to university and being able to communicate to the media, and even if they had the skills, they didn't want, they were very fearful of doing this because they thought that they were going to be tagged, and simply by doing that, by exposing themselves, they could have actually invited the police to put them in jail. And there is a lot of courage instead among Muslim communities, lots of skills that weren't available there. So we have to play with it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.